Remember what we learned last week, isn't it? We looked at the definition of sexual misconduct, and then we look at the types of sexual misconduct, which includes adultery, rape, molestation, sexual harassment, paraphilia, promiscuity, and prostitution. So we know that this precept extends to a whole lot of other conduct, not just cheating. And we also looked at what love is vis-a-vis lust. When you're in love, your partner is important. And when you're in lust, your desires are important. We have also learned that this euphoric feeling you get when you are at the initial stage of lust and attraction is impermanent. Today, we are going to look at karmic effects. Sexual misconduct, repeatedly pursued, developed, and cultivated, is conducive to hell, to the animal realm, and to the sphere of afflicted spirits. And for one reborn as a human, sexual misconduct at minimum conduces to enmity and rivalry. Conduce here means to help bring about. So you increase the likelihood of being reborn in the lower realms. Let us first see what happens when we perform skillful actions. On one occasion, Venerable Moggallana visited the Dewa world and asked some Dewas what good deed gave them this good rebirth. One Dewa said that he always spoke the truth. Another Dewa said that she was not angry and bore no ill will towards her abusive master. Another one said he practiced the dana. Speak truth and be not angry. From little give to one who asks. By these conditions, 3 to go on to the presence of the gods. This verse was spoken by the Buddha in response to Venerable Moggallana's experience. From here, it does seem very easy, isn't it, to gain rebirth in the heavenly realm through skillful actions. Of course, there are many, many layers in heaven. Let us look at another sutta. What do you think, bhikkhus? Which is more, the little bit of soil in my fingernail or the great earth? Venerable Sir, the great earth is more. Compared to the great earth, the little bit of soil that the Blessed One has taken up in his fingernail is not calculable, does not bear comparison, does not amount even to a fraction. So too, bhikkhus, those beings are few who, when they pass away as human beings, are reborn among human beings. But those beings are more numerous who, when they pass away as human beings, are reborn in hell. For what reason? Because they have not seen the Four Noble Truths. So the Buddha explained to the monks that it is very, very difficult for most people to get a human rebirth. Why? Simply because they do not see the Four Noble Truths and has much craving. Knowing the Four Noble Truths means knowing the Buddha's teachings, and at the mundane level, it means conducting our lives wisely with skillful thoughts, speech, and actions. At the supra-mundane level, it means eradicating suffering once and for all so that we will no longer be subject to the law of karma and the cycle of samsara, which is this. The Tibetan tradition sometimes places the Asura realm, which is realm number 4 here, above the human realm. The Buddha went on to say that because of ignorance of the Four Noble Truths, the majority of people who pass away as humans also get rebirths in the animal realm and the ghost realm. And those who lived out their lives in the lower realms are usually reborn there. Very few get reborn as humans or dewas. Similarly, very few humans are reborn as dewas. Not only that, very few dewas who passed away are reborn again as dewas. Most are reborn in the lower realms. Now, that's the bad news. But the good news is that we are now learning about the Four Noble Truths. But what if we have accumulated a lot of bad karma? Is there a way we can greatly decrease our chances of being reborn in the lower realm? Yes, definitely. And we will come to that very soon. Let us move on to practical applications. We are back to these 5 points. Do you recall? I will always repeat these 5 points for all my talks, so it's easier to remember. Let me start off with constant reflections. Remember this slide? Now, adultery is very clear. It does not mean that it is not adultery, not exploitation, no casual sex, or any forms of sexual misconduct. Then it is okay to have sex with another person before marriage. In such cases, if you reflect, you have to think about the possible consequences of your actions. For example, you ask yourself, are you on the same page as your sexual partner on the subject of sex? Commitment, marriage, and parenthood. Why? Because some people have very liberal views about sex, while others will only have sex if they love the other person, because they view sex as a very intimate act that comes with the serious intention of having a long-term relationship, marriage. Number 2, and if you want to have premarital sex, have you thought of the possibility of unwanted pregnancy? If pregnancy occurs, how are you going to deal with it? Abortion? Because that will be breaching the first precept. Whatever is your choice, remember this. Do not harm self, do not harm others. So the spirit of this precept asks us to look at the motivation behind our unskillful actions, to reflect on our past, present, and future actions. In this way, allow us as lay person to make the right choices based on wisdom, loving kindness, and compassion. Next, we give ourselves moral reminders as often as possible. In our practice, we work with the core defilements of greed, hatred, and delusion, which gives rise to a whole spectrum of secondary defilements, examples of which are shown here. So if you have any lustful tendencies, exercise restraint, pull back, hold back, not to entertain such thoughts. Well, you can seek other sense pleasures like watch a movie, watch Netflix. Know that it is just sense pleasure. Distract the mind. It is just craving. Turn the craving into something else. I have entered upon a classless condition. My living is dependent upon others. My deportment should be different. Do I reproach myself in regard to virtuous behavior? Do my wise fellow monks, having investigated, reproach me in regard to virtuous behavior? I must be parted and separated from everyone and everything dear and agreeable to me. In the Sangha, chanting by monks includes the 10 subjects for frequent recollection by the monastics, some of which are actually shown here. What is also included in this recital is this. You can read this on your own. You're very familiar with it by now. Heir to our karma does not refer to a good or bad rebirth alone. It also refers to the mental landscape in this present life. We can choose to have heaven on earth or hell on earth in the way we live our lives here and now. Whether it is this present life or the next life, it is entirely up to us. A moral reminder like this helps to hold us back from temptations to commit sexual misconduct or other unskillful actions. There are also other moral reminders like this, right? Now, Ajahn Chah would tell this to newlyweds who visited his monastery. You have given your hand in marriage. Your hand has 5 fingers. Think of them as the 5 precepts. Practice the precepts in your marriage, and you will be a happy, and it will be a happy one. That is all you need. Well, other things can also serve as moral reminders. Dhamma discussions with your Kalyana Mitas, reading Dhamma books, listening to Dhamma talks, etc., and meditation. As we go about our day with these little moral reminders, we can attend to our unskillful habits and little by little steer these habits in the direction of the skillful and the wholesome. Next. Let's look at what the Buddha said in the Sigalowata Sutta, also known as the layperson's code of discipline. Dice, women, liquor, dancing, singing, sleeping by day, sauntering at unseemly hours, evil companions, avarice, these 9 causes ruin a man. Who plays with dice and drinks, intoxicants, goes to women who are dear unto others as their own lives, associates with the mean and not with the elders, he declines just as the moon during the waning half. In this sutta, the Buddha kept reiterating how evil friends can cause one's downfall. The Chinese have this saying, right? 近朱者赤，近墨者黑. Because sexual energy is such a potent force, we should not fuel it even further by associating with friends that can influence us to do the wrong things. Next. Rationalization. Now, rationalization is a defense mechanism that involves explaining an unacceptable behavior or feeling in a logical manner because we want to avoid or hide the true feeling, the true reason for that feeling or behavior. Example, in the case of adultery, you will find the most rationalization. Well, it can involve blaming the spouse directly or indirectly. And rationalization can also be a form of denial. Apparently, right? Even when a woman does not know, not at least 100%, that she is being cheated on by her husband, she's still very likely aware of the emotional and maybe even the physical distancing in her marriage. Call it the woman's intuition. So in short, people who commit sexual misconduct, or for that matter, any other unskillful action, rationalize because they want to avoid taking responsibility and they want to avoid the guilt that comes with that action. Defilements have their own logic. Those who break this precept usually have reasons they find compelling. Men like to cite their natural instincts as an excuse. For women, it tends to be love. This is by Ajahn Jayasaro. Neither side accepts responsibility for their behavior. Instead, they claim that it was the body's desire or their love, rather than they themselves, that was responsible. While it is true that human beings routinely face physical or emotional temptation, we need to be clear that the violation of precepts takes place for no other reason than the desire to do so. Yes, true, the mind and the body is not self, but this is not the right way to realize the Dhamma. Taking responsibility for one's own actions, understanding the law of karma, is an important part of right view. If our morality only persists in the absence of defilement, then it is not morality at all. What is this desire? The craving, which is a cause of suffering, the second noble truth. As long as we are not enlightened, we will always have defilements. Morality is not defined as an absence of defilement. Morality means knowing what action is skillful and what is not through thinking, speech, and action. Are you able to exercise restraint over unskillful actions? Can the person perform skillful actions? In short, morality means having control over your defilements and not finding excuses for them. And next is this. If we have been unskillful in our sexual behavior, can we get rid of the karmic demerit points that is incurred as a result? Let us look at what the Buddha said. Suppose a man would drop a lump of salt into a small bowl of water. What do you think, bhikkhus? Would that lump of salt make the small quantity of water in the bowl salty and undrinkable? Yes, Bhante. For what reason? Because the water in the bowl is limited, thus the lump of salt would make it salty and undrinkable. But suppose a man would drop a lump of salt into a river Ganges. What do you think, bhikkhus? Would that lump of salt make the river Ganges become salty and undrinkable? No, Bhante. For what reason? Because the river Ganges contains a large volume of water, thus that lump of salt would not make it salty and undrinkable. So too, bhikkhus, some person here has created trifling bad karma, yet it leads him to health. And there is a case where the very same sort of trifling deed done by the other individual is experienced in the here and now, and for the most part barely appears for a moment. Trifling here means of little significance or value. So if you have a river of good karma, one unprofitable, unskillful action will make only a very small difference or hardly any difference in the present life. If you have only a small bowl of good karma, one unskillful action can sour the whole life and can even give you a bad rebirth. So what does that tell us? Collect as much water of good karma, right, as much as possible. So there are many ways of doing good. And charity starts at home. Be filial, be a responsible husband or father. Be a responsible wife, mother. Outside the home, we donate to worthy causes. We share our food, our time and expertise to help others in need. And right now, joining Bob's programs and talks, you're already accumulating good merits. You're already performing 5 out of 10 meritorious deeds, right? Reverence, you had a very nice long puja. You meditated just now. You're listening to the Dhamma now. You're straightening your views. Later, you share merits. And after the talk, you make financial contributions to BAPS to keep the organization operational. Already at least 6 out of 10. So where sexual behavior is concerned, we treat the opposite sex in a respectful way and proper and skillful manner. We practice looking on women who are older than us as mothers, and as older sisters if they are a few years older than us, and younger sisters if they are a few years younger than us. Okay? We substitute the wholesome perceptions of women for sensual ones. This is a beautiful gift that we can give women. And of course, this also applies to women on the perception of men. We offer women the gift of wholesome response to them as human beings, rather than following the instinctive attraction to or obsession with their bodies or some aspect of their physical appearance. Now, on the subject of marriage, the Buddha said this in the Sigalowata Sutta. Okay, first, we see how husbands should treat their wives. He is courteous to her. He does not despise her, which means you do not disparage your spouse or show disrespect. He is faithful to her. The Buddha's advice to a husband to practice fidelity here is in contradiction to the social norm at that time, where polygamy was very common. All right? And men at that time do not suffer any social stigma for being unfaithful. And yet the Buddha put this in as one of the conditions. 4, he hands over authority to her. Okay. And 5, he provides her with adornments. 4, hands over authority to her because during that time, woman manages the household while men are the breadwinners. So let's look at the reverse. She performs her duties well. She is hospitable to relations and attendants. So a woman should also be faithful. She protects what he brings. She's skilled and industrious in discharging her duties. So when it comes to the role of sex in marriage, Ajahn Jayasaro sums it very well. Sex is a natural part of romantic love, but for a householder, intelligent governance of sexual drive rather than abstinence is the standard. In other words, do not let your sex drive manage your marriage. Instead, we should manage one's sexual needs by living life in accordance with the Noble Eightfold Path. So, the inner restraint that the Buddha urged means not becoming infatuated with sex, not becoming its slave, not letting sex become the main focus of married life. This is what we have looked at so far. All right, let's move on to the next topic. Let's start with a story. Okay. All right. Once there lived in Rajagaha, all right, I'm to purification of the mind. So once there lived in Rajagaha a very beautiful courtesan called Sirima. So Sirima would offer alms food to 8 monks daily. She was so beautiful that a young monk even fell desperately in love with her. And when she died, the Buddha requested that the body be taken to the cemetery and left there, but protected from trolls and vultures. On the 4th day, her body started decaying. It was all bloated and housed maggots. The Buddha took the monks there to observe her rotting corpse. The young man who was in love with Sirima joined them, not knowing that Sirima had died. And the Buddha told his monks that in this very city, men used to pay 1,000 pieces of money for the privilege of spending a night with this woman. Now there is no one who would even take her. See this body beautiful, a mass of sores, a congeries, much considered but miserable, where nothing stable, nothing persists. Now, this Dhammapada verse by the Buddha came about because of this story, this incident. Upon hearing this verse and seeing the decomposed body, the young monk saw through the delusions of beauty and sexual desire. With this insight, he achieved fruition, which is the first stage of enlightenment. So no one, that's okay, so there's one way to help us manage sexual desire is to contemplate the physical aspects and characteristics of the body. If you have sexual desire for someone other than your spouse or for someone whom you should not have a sexual desire for, then contemplate that object of your sexual desire in this way. In fact, these first 5 will do because they are what you lust for, right? People just care for the external, the form, because internally cannot be seen. So people normally can't be bothered with their diet. I went to an autopsy before where I saw 7 bodies got cut up before my very eyes. Let me tell you, one heart will look like another heart. One kidney will look like another kidney. You really can't tell much of a difference. So another way is to visualize the object of your sexual desire aging before your eyes. Know that what is clear and agreeable to you will not last. How do you feel about that? If you're brave enough, imagine the object of your sexual desire as a corpse and envision her corpse after 3 days, after 5 days, after 7 days, and so on and so on. Why do we consider this kind of exercise as purification of the mind? Because you are knowing the body as it is. The body as body is nothing but the 4 elements, and it is impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. Contemplation of the body teaches us to let go of our attachment to our body as well as other bodies as well. Now for another story. Okay. This one was narrated by Ajahn Brahm in his book Open the Door to Your Heart. And I think these books are suitable for beginners. Back in 1983, Ajahn and some other monks had to build a Bodhinana monastery in Perth on their own because they had no money. They learned how to prepare the foundation, lay concrete and bricks, erect the roof, and put in the plumbing, the whole works. After building his first brick wall, he noticed that the wall was spoiled by 2 bricks, which were not laid properly. After that, every time he showed visitors around the completed monastery, he would avoid taking them past the wall. One day, someone saw the wall and said it was a nice wall. When he pointed out the 2 bad bricks, the other person said this: "Yes, I can see those 2 bad bricks, but I can also see the 998 good bricks as well." So similarly, in the first 2 stages of romantic love, and even in the beginning of the 3rd stage, we tend to pay attention to the good bricks where our partner is concerned. But after some years of marriage, when things settle down, where passions become more subdued with work and children, there is really not much time to cultivate the relationship, to create the causes and conditions to keep the flame of fire burning. You start to take each other for granted, and people change over the years. And you do not keep in sync with each other and grow together in a relationship. That's when you notice the 2 bad bricks and forget about the other 998 bricks. Why? Because of the fault finding mind. So when this slide came up, what do you notice first, the good bricks or the bad bricks? That is why metta is important. And Ajahn Sumedho said this: metta means a little more than just kindness. It is a penetrating kindness, a kind awareness. This means that metta is not just a superficial feeling. It permeates our whole mind, leaving no room for negativities. Metta does not have expectations and it does not judge. When you have loving kindness, you will accept your spouse as he or she is. You love your spouse the way you love your children, warts and all. You do not just love because of, but in spite of. Some people will find it wrong to have metta towards your partner, your spouse, because technically, lust is absent. Lust is absent when you have metta, correct? After all, romantic love, sex is important because it promotes bonding between couples. Yes, true metta does not have lust, which is a form of lobha and dosa, greed and hatred. But lobha and dosa are only eradicated at the 3rd stage of enlightenment. So not to worry, we will have a long way to go even if we cultivate metta for our spouse. I assure the married couples here that your sex life will not get affected. Now, cultivation of metta is not just for the spouse. It applies to other people as well. An attractive woman comes into the monastery and we refrain from indulging in sexual perceptions, reflections, whether by consciously trying to perceive the woman as a sister or wishing her freedom from suffering. Practicing metta, we reflect, may she be well. Again, I quote for Ajahn Jayasaro. So it makes it more difficult, right, to dwell on lust for women when you bring up metta in your heart and sincerely wish her to be well and happy. When you do that, you are replacing unskillful thoughts with skillful ones. And women should also do the same where other men are concerned. Cultivation of metta is not just for the spouse. It applies to other people as well. It makes it more difficult to dwell on your lust for women when you bring up metta in your heart and sincerely wish her to be well and happy. When you do that, you are replacing unskillful thoughts with skillful ones. Okay? So I repeat that again to let you know. that is very important. We look in the mind. Next, knowing the mind as it is. When we pay careful attention to the energy of sexual desire, we can learn a lot about the nature of the desire itself, right? People usually think that if you do not express it, you suppress it. But there is also one way of handling it, the skillful way, the vipassana way. When sexual energy arises, we have to be mindful enough to catch it. We turn our attention again inwards. Take a step back and observe how the energy of this desire changes and fades away without any involvement from us. We also see how it affects us physically. So let us look at this exercise in a different format. We're now seeing the mind as it is. So when lust arises, we just observe lust and not get personal. We have to know that our need or cause of suffering comes from within us. We always forget this and blame outside factors for our suffering. Remember, attractive person of opposite sex is not the cause of your sexual desire. That person is just a trigger, a condition that acts as a trigger. So when lust arises, know that it will also fall. There's nothing to suppress and do not get personal. And very importantly, we must also recognize this energy as impermanent, dukkha, and not self. So we are training ourselves to see the true nature of the mind. And this is vipassana training. So if you cannot yet be sensitive to the mind, you start with using metta. Right? And then as you advance in your practice, as you meditate more, you will be able to see the mind as the mind. So the Noble Eightfold Path is like a spider web because one path factor is related to all the others. So right action influences the other path factors and is also influenced by them. Right? So our practice avoiding evil, do good, and purifying the mind, where sexual conduct is concerned, improves not only morality, right, but also the wisdom and concentration. All right. So this is the end of my Dhamma sharing. I'm going to stop the screen share. I'm open for Q&A. Hal, you can ask me any questions, including meditation.
Thank you very much for your very enlightening talk. Let's see if there are questions coming through. Usually takes a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me talk about the fact that the friends make a lot of difference. I have a client who saw me, actually quite a number of clients saw me, and they are married to actually bankers. And one client saw me because she suspected that the husband was cheating on her. And her reasons is that the friends that my husband hang around with, they believe in certain lifestyle. They feel that, it's a measure of success. If you own a fancy car, you have a good job, you have a certain lifestyle, and it's okay to just flirt. It's okay to have a girlfriend as long as you don't get caught. So actually, quite a number of divorces happen in certain professions. I don't want to say which profession, but it's because of the culture, the kind of friends, the kind of influence. Yeah.
But then I think in society, because of a lot of this influence, remember a couple of years back, there's this movie, I think The Filthy Rich People, filmed in Malaysia, Singapore, where Michelle Yeoh and the rest of the gang, they were just, oh sorry, is it a bit too soft?
Yeah, I can't really hear you.
Yeah. Only yesterday I put up this webcam and my brother see what just let me just try to, I'm not quite sure, but I put it on E3. Is it okay? You're not, huh?
Yeah, never mind.
Still not quite. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hope you can still make out of it. Yeah. So
Yeah, better.
a lot of these are social things that you can't control. Movies and things like that, and they show a lot of things of misquoted things, and especially that movie about these. I couldn't remember the name of the movie, but it is about the filthy rich and how they live life and the way they do things, indulge in food, indulge in sex, indulge in many things. And a lot of youngsters they like to watch this movie. And I think it's pretty bad influence in a way, but then it's, movie is a movie. Business people make money out of it. So it's a bit difficult actually to control some of these things.
Yeah, because they make money out of selling you a fantasy, which is not reality. And a lot of people like to watch this kind of romantic shows because it's a fantasy. It satisfies their craving. All right, directors, producers, actors, actresses, they do one thing only. They earn a lot of money because they know how to capture your mind. So the goal is to capture your mind so that you get addicted to the story, to the movie line. But if we know the mind, we know that this is not real, we turn our mind back to reality. You see, that's the reason why Hollywood marriages don't really last, because their marriage is also always within 2 years. They confuse the lust with love. All right. So I don't want to repeat what I said last year. So we just be very mindful, have a longer courtship period if you're not married yet. Okay. Does one progress from samatha meditation to vipassana meditation? Very good question. Yes. Yes. Okay. So first and foremost, you can't do vipassana unless you start to calm the mind first. So you need to do samatha. So once your mind is calm, then you will be able to go to samadhi. And in samadhi, that is the best mind to do vipassana. Okay. So one of the first realization in samadhi is knowing the mind for what it is. Seeing, you feel the mind, you know what the mind is. Let's say, for example, I give you an example like Second Noble Truth, right? Craving is suffering. And many people will say, craving is suffering, man? Because craving equates with desire, right? How can that be dukkha, right? But let's say, for example, you have been cultivating your mind for a while, right? Your mind is quiet, relatively quiet. And let's say you've gone for a meditation retreat and you come back from the retreat, your mind is still pretty quiet. Yeah. And then suddenly you see durians. I don't know about you, but I love durians, especially durians from Malaysia. The anghe, very good. So you see the durians and suddenly the craving arises. And because you have just come back from a retreat and your mind is quiet, suddenly you see how your mind turns and it's heavy and it even tastes a bit bitter. And then suddenly you realize not by technical knowledge that craving is dukkha to the mind. So this is just an example that the Buddha Dhamma is about practice, is about realization, is getting your insight, is not just studying. Okay, for example, if let's say you meditate, all right, you do samatha, and when your mind is quiet, then your mind is very quiet, and you contemplate mind and body. You may get this insight where suddenly there's no soul. It's just my mind and just body. They're both not connected. And then you suddenly realize, it's a conditioning of the mind that, this body has an ecosystem of its own. No, it's really not me. I'm just 5 aggregates. Right? When you're in samatha, when your mind is very quiet, right? Some people, I'm not sure if all people are the same. You just see the falling of the mind. Your mind falls. But it may come to a point in time when you see thoughts arises, thoughts fall, thought arises, thoughts fall. You can see it. Then you realize this is not real. The past is not real. It only comes alive when you think about it. The only thing that's real, that is unchanging, is really your awareness, right? So how do you know when you're in samadhi? When you're in samadhi, you will know because there's a shift in your mind. You will feel it. You have sukha, you have piti, vitaka, vichara, and you have equanimity, upekkha. So to me is at the same time you also can do vipassana, even if you're not samadhi. For example, you use mental object. So far, the meditation that I guided you, the short 15 minute, is about using the body. All right, mindfulness of the body. You can use mental object. For example, you do metta meditation. All right. So when you're doing metta, a mental object, usually if your mind is like more busy, you use mental object. It's also vipassana, right? Telling yourself your mind to be skillful. So you use that mental object, it's also samatha, it's also vipassana. Or you can do contemplation of the 32 parts of the body. All right. So you can do that contemplation and, like you move your head hair, you put it there, is impermanent, is subject to decay, it's not I, it's not mine, you're not self. So meditation like that is also vipassana. Or you can do contemplation of death. Yeah, death meditation. And I think Bab's organizing a retreat that's quite soon. It's called Die Before You Die by Ajahn Amaru. Okay, so that retreat, there will be, I think Ajahn will guide us in how to prepare for death. So that will be both samatha and vipassana. Yeah, but understand that for a normal human being, the thoughts in the mind is at least 100 over 1,000. The mind starts thinking the day you wake. But if you have been meditating for a while, you'll realize that you have less thinking, less thoughts, easier to let go. Right? And when you're sitting there, and I mentioned to be nobody, you're sitting there, be nobody. So when you don't have that unnecessary stray thoughts, you don't have perception, you don't have information, you don't have the sankhara, right? And the sense of I comes from what? The thinking, ma. The craving, ma, I want this, I want that, I need this, I need it. So all the thinking always links back to I, lor. Yeah, so I'm trying to just link everything you know about the Dhamma and make it so it's relevant and you see it. I hope I make sense. Okay, thank you.
Just a man taking a second wife needs consent. The consent from the first wife is breaking the third ritual.
Oh, you're talking about another religion, right?
Yeah, maybe, I'm not sure. This is from Brother Foo 4.
Oh, I see. So you take a second wife, the consent of the first wife. Okay. I mean, in the past, right? In the past is like 三妻四妾是很平常的事, right? I mean, you can have quite a few. So women don't, so because it's socially acceptable, right? But then again, in 2,500 years, it was also the same thing. But Buddha advised to just have one, ma, to be faithful, ma. Because even if your first wife consents, she's still hurt, you know. You don't want to share. You don't want to share your partner. I mean, it's just natural human instinct. I mean, if your partner says no problem, go. I mean, you're probably your partner is probably enlightened. He has reached the first, second stage enlightenment, can let you go lah. But there's still hurt lah. You're still hurting your partner. Yeah. But if you look at all the old shows, right? You know the Zhang Yimou have this show, right? Something like Red Lantern hung very high. Anyone of you remember the Chinese word? The first Zhang Yimou show that made him so famous, but the show was actually banned in China. It's to talk about this man who's a landowner with 4 wives and talk about the suffering of the wives. Wow. That show had a lot of impact on me then. Yeah. The maid Gong Li, famous. Gong Li became famous because of that show. Yeah.
Okay. But then of course, like in Malaysia, you know, Muslims, their religion, they are okay with 4 wives as long as the first wife is agreeable and of course, if the man financially can take care of them. But then this is their religion. We cannot comment anything.
Yeah, we can't comment anything.
Yeah. Just a point while waiting for questions. In these 31 realms of existence, sometimes a bit confusing. Some they say 30 realms, some they say 31 realms, but then there's one realm, the Asura.
Yeah.
I did hear some Dhamma talk. It says that the Asura are actually Brahma. You know, they're not counted, so they take that out and become 30 realms.
It's 31 realms. It's in the Sutta. It's 31 realms. The Tibetan tradition believes that the Asura realm is above the human, because if they are quite powerful, you can actually sense their presence. They are quite strong. All right, but it's still a lower realm because the energy is actually more dense. More dense. More greed, more hatred, more delusion.
Yeah. While waiting, maybe just a quick point. In the Four Noble Truths, we got suffering and the cause of suffering. The second one, the cause of suffering, which is craving or tanha.
Yeah.
I remember listening to a Dhamma talk, it listed three. One is kama tanha, one is bhava tanha, and one is vibhava, meaning sensual.
That is three, what? It's
Yeah.
three. It's defined. Yeah.
In terms of practice, are they of kind of equal weight, or should we just look at one? And how would you look at these three?
You must let go of all three craving.
All three, yeah.
The craving. I saw his chat. Raise the red lantern. Yeah. That's the show. Raise the red lantern. Yeah. Thank you, Sister Ling. Okay. Now, craving for sense pleasure. You need to learn that is dukkha. Right? Craving begets craving begets craving. So the mind is always looking out to search for happiness. I eat good food. I must have a BMW to be happy. Happiness is not dependent on external. It's dependent on your response. Okay? You must let go of sense. You must let go of the craving for being, that sense of I, the becoming, right? That ego. And you must let go of non-being. That means when things don't go your way, you also know how to let go. That is aversion. Okay? So it's all three. That is the cause of the suffering. So when you have aversion, is always when things don't go your way or not according to your expectations, which is the other kind of craving.
Absolutely.
Yeah.